kitchen, as you're having your breakfast, whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're watching GB News. Our top story, a record waiting list has cast a shadow over the NHS's 75th anniversary. Political leaders, though, along with members of the royal family, paid tribute to staff working in the NHS during a ceremony at Westminster Abbey. And that comes as Labour warned the NHS will die out without further investment and modernisation. 7.4 million people are now on NHS waiting lists, with the government acknowledging that number could get worse before it gets better. The Shadow Health Secretary says the NHS is facing the worst crisis in its history.
I'm deeply angry about the two-tier system we have in our country today, where those who can afford it are paying to go private and those who can't afford it are being left behind. And my answer would be, in the short term, where there is spare capacity in the private sector, we should be paying for it on NHS terms so that people who can't afford it are getting it free at the point of use. That would be my answer. I've got no objection to using private sector capacity to get NHS waiting lists down faster.
Wes Streeting speaking earlier on today. Well, Sir Keir Starmer will pledge to smash the class ceiling, as he calls it, with his plans to reform the education system if his party wins the next election. In a speech due tomorrow, the Labour leader is expected to say he wants 500,000 more school children to reach their early learning targets by 2030. His proposal includes modernising the curriculum and getting rid of what Labour describes as the elitism surrounding academic education. There's anger over plans which would see the closure of almost every railway station ticket office in England. The proposal, unveiled by the Rail Delivery Group, affects hundreds of stations, with facilities only expected to remain open at the busiest stations. Disability charities and unions are among those who voiced their concerns, saying it'll impact vulnerable people and lead to job losses. The decision about which offices will be closed is going to be made after a consultation process. Now, a council is launching legal action against the Home Secretary over the number of migrant children arriving on its shores. Kent County Council says it's under a wholly disproportionate strain due to hundreds of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. Despite a national scheme to distribute migrants across counties, the location of Dover's port means that Kent is affected more than others. And council bosses say the pressure on its services continues to be overlooked by central government, which has in turn prompted them to begin a claim for a judicial review against Suella Braverman. And lastly, King Charles has been presented with the honours of Scotland. At a service of Thanksgiving in Edinburgh, the King received the oldest crown jewels in Britain. That's a crown, a sceptre and a sword made of gold and silver and studded with precious gems. And the day of pomp and pageantry concluded with an impressive fly-past conducted by the Red Arrows. The skies over Edinburgh emblazoned with the colours red, white and blue. Well, the event did also see several protests, with Police Scotland confirming 2 women were arrested after climbing over crowd barriers. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your nightly look at the next day's newspapers with 3 reasonably priced comedians. I'm one of them, I'm Leo Kiersten. I'm joined by Steve N. Allen and Diane N. Spencer. How are you both doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Yeah, pretty good. I'm on the squeakiest chair ever, so I'm going to try and really pretend that there's a pole that sticks up from it and not move.
Right.
Look at that, there you go.
OK, Diane, how's your chair?
My chair's absolutely great, thanks. We are just loving this. In fact, I'm going to recline silently.
Look at that. She brought some WD-40 with her. Anyway, that's the chit-chat out of the way. Let's have a look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with AI chatbot told Windsor intruder to kill the Queen. The Guardian has lung cancer diagnosis in women to outnumber men's for first time. The Financial Times has Xi told Putin face-to-face not to launch nuclear strike against Ukraine forces. The Daily Express leads with Lords must not defy will of the people. The Eye has 7% mortgages forecast this summer as big lender hike UK rates again. The Daily Star has AI chatbot wanted me to kill the Queen. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with the chatbot telling somebody to kill the Queen in the Daily Mail, Steve.
Yeah, let's call this misleading headline of the day. Daily Mail, AI chatbot told Windsor intruder to kill the Queen. We actually read what happened. He was chatting because he didn't have a girlfriend because, you know, so he got an AI girlfriend. He then explained his plan to kill the Queen. The chatbot was like, you can do it.
Just like a real girlfriend.
Well, no, supportive. So actually, almost the opposite. But no, that's harsh. But you've not. You don't know. You don't know. You weren't there. So it's not like the chatbot was like, you know what you should do? Go and kill the Queen. It was the insanity is all still in this guy's category, and the AI is just an AI. It's just a chatbot just saying, yeah, that's great. There's a bit in the interaction where he says, I'm an assassin, and the chatbot says, you're not like other people. Well, that's right, isn't it? So, yeah, I'm not sure if we should be more worried about AI. Normally, every day, there's a story about AI to terrify us.
Yeah.
When it was first invented, the newspapers said it'll mean people cheat at exams, then it'll end the world, then it'll replace Simon Cowell, then it'll launch nuclear weapons and will write songs. That's been the arc of how terrified we should be, and now apparently it tells you to kill the Queen, but it doesn't. It just agrees with you.
Yeah, and Diane, I mean, this guy also referenced himself as a Sith Lord and Darth Vader or something. I mean, it seems like it was more the Disney Channel than AI that was responsible for this.
I think definitely we should be blaming the Star Wars sort of genre for this, because clearly they have encouraged people to believe that they can be Sith Lords and they can take on their own missions where they jump over the fences at Buckingham Palace. I mean, it's quite a leap, really. And yeah, I do agree with Steve that blaming it on the AI is not quite correct here. She was just being a good AI companion because apparently she's sold as the AI companion. Who cares? And she was just supporting his dreams and aspirations. The issue comes with the human who has the wonky dreams and aspirations, then having a very supportive chatbot going, you can do it, I believe in you.
But do you think, given that people sometimes do crazy things and sometimes have psychotic episodes, we're going to have to put safeguards in chatbots so they don't encourage people to, I don't know, massacre the Queen or anybody else?
But isn't that an interesting feature of an actual mental illness, schizophrenia, where you believe the television is talking to you?
Now it actually is.
Yes, and now it actually is talking to you, and it knows your name and it knows your hobbies, and it says, yes, you are a Sith Lord.
He called himself Darth Jones, which is somehow so much fun. I don't know if it's Welsh or like Dad's Army does Star Wars.
If the Sith Lords had come from Swindon, we'd have a Darth Jones. Anyway, next up, we've got the front cover of the Express, Diane.
Yes, so with the headline, the Lords must not, underlined, defy the will of the people. So this is to do with the House of Lords. They voted against, I think, 4 of the basic tenets of the Rwanda plan, essentially, and they want to force Suella Braverman to change it, and they're saying, no, you can't hold women and children for as long as you are, you can't force people who, for example...
I mean, that's not going to be a problem, because there's no women and children coming across in the boats. I mean, I've yet to see one female face in those...
Are you hanging out at the beach, Leo?
Sometimes.
Yeah,
not this week, but, you know, when the weather was nice.
You're hanging out at the beach with your binoculars, you're looking at all the boats?
Not all the boats, but I'm just saying, I mean, this is, you know, we're told that these are refugees fleeing a war zone. It's like, well, why are they just sending the young men? Like, aren't other people fleeing the war zone?
Well, this is what sort of the House of Lords are trying to sort of do. They're saying that if women and children are coming across, they're being held for too long. They're also saying that that we shouldn't send people back to we shouldn't send people to Rwanda if they're LGBT, because they could be persecuted in their own home country.
So somebody can just say, oh, by the way, I'm non-binary, genderqueer, so then they've got a loophole for not getting sent to Rwanda.
Ooh, possibly there are some bad faith actors. But what I find quite interesting about this is that the House of Lords is kind of doing this. And recently we've had a lot of controversy about the House of Lords because obviously Rishi Sunak had to sort of check the peerage list, because he had to check not only Boris Johnson's peerage list, but he also had to check Liz Truss's list.
I forgot about her, yeah.
Yeah, she got a list. She only had 4 people on it, bless her, but I think it's like one for every 15 days she was Prime Minister.
It's like holiday days.
So it's quite interesting because there's so much about how we should possibly reform the House of Lords, because also, you know, there was that whole thing about you pay £3 million to the Tory party, you get a peerage. So it's interesting that at this point they are providing a backstop to what the main party, the Conservative Party, is saying, but this is the will of Britain. Britain wants us to stop the small boats. And as we all know, it's one of Rishi's big 5 pledges that he put on his PowerPoint presentation. So he really wants to push this through.
Yeah. Must be serious if it's on a PowerPoint presentation, I'll give you that much. This is the role of the House of Lords, though, so it's one of those things where if you want it reformed, reform it anyway. Don't just complain when it goes against what you want. The House of Lords needs reforming. The way in which we do it is a bizarre system. Something needs to be improved. Although there is something that makes me think when they say this is the will of the people. When was the last time you actually checked with the people? I'm not saying it's not, but this is about 3 prime ministers since last time anyone spoke to the people.
Well, if we look at other European countries, so for example in France, this poll was done before the riots of the past week. 64% of people said they were in favour of stopping, just completely stopping all immigration from outside Europe.
So I think to France. My point is rather that it's cheeky for the Conservatives to use the phrase "this is the will of the people" when they've not spoken to the people for 3 prime ministers now.
Well, I think every every time this question has been put to the people, I mean, yeah, no, that's a good point. But every time this question has been put to the people have said, actually, we don't want this mass immigration from the sort of despotic, war-torn countries with, men who follow these violent medieval ideologies. We think that might cause a few problems, and it has. We've got 40,000 Islamists on terror watch lists and stuff like that now. So every time the people have been asked, they've given a pretty clear answer, and they've been resoundingly ignored every time. And now you've got the elites, the people in the House of Lords. You've got also the Archbishop of Canterbury saying, "Oh no, we can't have anything that would stop people coming here. We must have open borders." Like, oh, fine, can we put them in your churches then?
Yeah, the church has got a lot of room, haven't they? And not many people are turning up there, so they have got the space.
Yeah, solves two problems. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Financial Times, Steve. What have they got in the front cover?
She told Putin face-to-face not to launch nuclear strike against Ukraine forces. Phew! So China's taking the credit for this, and, I always thought I'd like those guys. Good guys, the Chinese. There's a line in the article that really highlights it. One person was saying, if Russia were to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine, it's all downside for China. It's downwind is what it is, isn't it? That's when we think of nuclear weapons, we imagine the big ones of the old days. This is not what's in play, or would be in play.
This would be tactical.
Yeah, but still, it crosses that line, doesn't it? That then escalates us towards... we don't want nuclear weapons involved. This is a bad enough situation. So I think we have to say thanks, Xi.
Yeah.
Feels weird.
Yeah, it does a bit. And obviously, the other day, Dan, we saw Zelensky warn that Russia was mining, putting bombs on the roof, I believe it was, of the Zaporozhye nuclear plant.
Yes, that is the worry, because obviously the Russian army and their tactics, and by army I do mean sort of the 7 or 8 private military companies that make up the army as well as the army, do use these false flag sort of operations where they do something and then they sort of cover it up and say, oh, but it wasn't us, it was an accident or something else happened. And of course the worry is that they're going to trigger some kind of nuclear reaction at the Zaporizhzhia power plant, and then they're going to use it in a tactical sense. And then that way they have deployed sort of a nuclear device, but at the same time, it means that then the US and the UK won't retaliate. It's, I mean, Xi Jinping, thank you for saying that.
And Steve, do you think the big threat to Putin now actually comes from the east? I mean, all his army is deployed in Ukraine. I think it's something like 97% of the army is in Ukraine. So Xi has got the largest standing army in the world. He could just be like, well, you know what? I've always fancied the look of Siberia. So do you think he could just annex Russia? I mean, at the moment he's paying for the oil and gas that comes from Russia. Why pay for it when you can just take it?
Maybe, if that's the way it goes. Now we all lose. We all start kicking off everything that's nuclear. It's not just going to be one power plant that goes up if that happens, is it? So we're all downwind eventually if the explosion's big enough.
I wonder if NATO would arm Russia against China. That'd be the next interesting.
They could join.
Finishing this section, we've got the Guardian, Diane.
So they've got an interesting headline: lung cancer diagnoses in women to outnumber men's for the first time. Check us out, girls. We're number 1. So, sorry, it's very serious. It is actually very serious. So, ever since records...
It might be for the women, but the men are doing all right.
You guys are all, like, high-fiving and breathing.
Is this men getting healthier, or is it women getting less healthy?
Apparently, it's women getting less healthier. It's both.
Right.
Apparently, it's been in decline since the 1970s. The men have sort of started to ease off on the smoking. But at the same time, in the 1970s, the women started smoking more. And what happened after the 1970s? We had the 1980s, where everybody was like shoulder pads and power moves and sort of the boss woman in the stilettos with the big hair. And
does that cause cancer?
I think it does.
Shoulder pads.
Shoulder pads. Well, I mean, maybe for your eyes. But it's a sense that maybe as women were moving more into the workforce and women were taking sort of those bigger roles and they wanted to sort of adopt more freedoms, maybe one of those freedoms is smoking more. But men have been sort of managing to ease off in it and women haven't. And now they're saying that women should be checking for the signs of lung cancer the same way they should check for the signs of breast cancer. and they've sort of put a handy list in this article, things like persistent cough, shortness of breath, repeat of chest infections, just to keep an eye out for that as well, because there are some things, there are some diseases and some conditions, like heart attacks, that affect women as much as they affect men, but they can be misdiagnosed because of your gender.
Right.
So this is an important thing.
The way that the symptoms show that medicine has paid attention to the way the symptoms present in men way more than it has in women, so that we just don't have as much knowledge about how it affects women. For good context here is to remember, historically, all cancers, apart from breast and cervical, have been killing men more. We are terrible for that score. I mean, we're terrible.
Even testicular.
Testicular cancer kills more men than women. Yeah. Yep.
OK, well, that's it for part one. Coming up in part two, we've got police getting fired, the French getting rid of social media, and the SNP getting through a whole lot of cash. See you in a couple of minutes.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kears, here with my panel, Steve N. Allen and Daya N. Spencer. Let's continue with the stories. Kicking things off with the Metro and police overhauls could mean good cop, bad cop is going to be replaced with good cop, Steve.
Oh, maybe. Thousands of cops could be sacked in disciplinary system overhaul. They're looking into a review of the way that the dismissal process happens. That's right, we get to pick between cops doing really bad things or a staffing shortage. What a time to be alive, #winning. They're looking at the way that you can basically find misconduct and get rid of a police officer by putting some of the police in charge. At the moment, you need to have an independent, legally qualified chairman of this of the committee, the LQCs. You would have thought that having someone independent would have been the best way, rather than have the police police themselves. but it don't work. So maybe, yeah, let's see if the police can police themselves, and hopefully... at the moment, there are 6 stages that you have to go through before you could get rid of a bad apple, as they're always referred to. They want to get that down to 2. And I think that's about right. It's like University Challenge. The first rounds, loser playoff, quarter-final, semi-finals. Let's just get it done so we know what we're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, you must welcome these changes?
Yeah. What? Yeah, well, I actually do. Sack the police. Because they're massive hypocrites. And I'm sorry, but everybody is allowed to bend the rules at work. We all know that they put the blues and twos on when their Nando's is going cold. We all know that, right? But the state of this is absolutely appalling, because the way that they treat so many different groups, obviously, let's underline my group, women, the way that women have been murdered by police and raped by police, and apologies for people who are listening to this, it's very hard to listen to, but it's the truth. And it's just alarming that there's like 2,000 officers that could go, and you think, there's 2,000 officers that are possibly could be kicked out? I mean, I was a little bit worried about that. It does sound a lot, but then I thought, then again, Elon Musk got rid of 6,000 people at Twitter. And that vastly
Not for the same reason, though. I mean, I don't think any of them had been exposing themselves at McDonald's.
That is a very good point, you know. And they were saying that they need officers who do not maintain their vetting status would be automatically fired. So isn't that where you get sort of background check?
Yeah.
I mean, it's appalling, because if you fail a background check, you can't do a lot of different things. You had a background check. I've had one because I work with children, because I was a teacher. You had one because you work for the Foreign Office.
And for the police.
And for the police. And, like, it's just...
But, I mean, your background doesn't really change much. I mean, when you get your vetting renewed, it's not like they suddenly, oh, so now you're Libyan. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen.
No, but it means that they've done something serious enough that, like... It's just a shame that we shouldn't be having to check what the police are doing.
Yeah.
It's appalling. Like, they're the ones who should be holding up the law and looking after people, not the ones who... And are they going to fire them? Because you were right when you said staffing shortage. Because if the police are now checking on the police, then... And they go, well, look, I can either fire 12 officers and have a massive staffing shortage in my station, or I can do what's right and fire them.
Well, moving on, we've got The Guardian, and France's President Macron is taking tips from Middle Eastern dictators after suffering his own Arab Spring, or rather Arab Spring summer. Anyway, Diane.
So Macron accused of authoritarianism after threat to cut off social media. This is insane. So Macron has decided that because the young people are using Snapchat and TikTok to get together to do all this rioting, which we've seen over the past couple of days, he has said that when things get out of hand, we may have to regulate it. So he's literally talking about creating a blackout. I mean, he's saying, oh, no, it wouldn't be a blackout, but you just wouldn't be able to use it. What? This is the same kind of dictatorship. Like, it's essentially a social media lockdown because he doesn't like what they're doing with social media. But then again, you've got the people who are very connected to, obviously, the murder of the young boy, the 17-year-old, who are saying this is a distraction. He's trying to throw this into the press, and because we're all now saying, oh, wait, he's going to cut off social media, when actually the discussion should be about the police violence.
Well, he's also stopping the footage of the riots circulating, because, I mean, they're on such a huge scale. The first few nights of the riots, there's so much footage being shared on not just Snapchat, but other social media sources. But then, you know, he shut down Snapchat, and it's a way of stopping the actual information spreading. It's not just stopping the riots spreading, it's sort of PR control for Macron.
I'd be surprised if it really works, because we're still talking about it, and these are young people we're talking about. They are skilled in the ways of using a VPN to get you porn. So even if you try and stop them using the internet, basically there's no way to shut down the ability to get footage out. It might not be in Snapchat or the ways you think of straight away, but there's so many services that you can put videos on these days, and if the press then sees it, then we still get it out of there. I just don't think it can work. So I do like the bit in the story where he was accused of threatening to cut off social media, and an official said, we're not threatening to do that, we're threatening to just occasionally and temporarily turning it off. Yeah, That's what we presume. That's exactly.
There's nothing as permanent as a temporary government measure. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said that. And what's interesting is the French police union has come out and said it was actually drug dealers who ended the riots because it was affecting their business. So they managed to go out and quash, all these people rioting. So yeah, but it's not great times when you're relying on criminals to stop rioters. We could maybe have some order in society, although it is France, it's not here. Anyway, moving on, we've got the Express and Just Stop Oil's latest protest saw them storm the courts at Wimbledon. New balls, please, for the police. They should be arresting this criminal gang, Steve.
Wimbledon security measures fail as Just Stop Oil protesters cover court in confetti. So Wimbledon organisers, they had extra measures in to try and stop the protest. That worked well. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a bit of climate change talk as much as the next person who's nowhere near here. But even I saw this news alert pop up on my phone. Just Stop Oil protesters disrupt.
You can see them on the screen there.
As soon as I didn't even make it through the headline before I'd stopped. Like, again, I don't even care where it is now, because this was about doing a protest that doesn't really link to what the problem is, just so we all talk about it and it gets in the press. And hopefully that novelty is waning, because if you've got a beef with the government, protest the government. Don't get in our lives. Don't make me the pawn in your protest, would be my way of looking at it.
Yeah, and that's pawn with an AW, not an OR.
Also, don't make me that either.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd all... I mean, they might get more attention. But
orange powder everywhere.
Diane, I mean, would you like to see Just Stop Oil maybe protest against cage fighting next? See how well they do in the octagon. Some confetti around.
I mean, they didn't protest Glastonbury.
Yeah.
I guess because they were busy enjoying it. They just seem to want to...
Would you have noticed? Powder thrown everywhere, people sitting down. Just blends in Glastonbury.
I mean, the unfortunate thing is that it's not really helping people join the Just Stop Oil protest, because it's just causing them pain in their lives and they're actually ignoring the greater problem. I don't think it's helping the environment. Visitors were subjected to airport-style checks, it says, where the bags were scoured for chalk dust, cable ties. I mean, you might just be wanting to have a fun weekend. But
chalk dust for lifting.
What I love is you didn't say what the cable ties were for. We all know.
And also chalk dust. I mean, people are going to be like, oh, no, that's not chalk dust. That's cocaine, officer.
But they also were confiscating sun cream. Now, I'm sorry, but as a ginger person...
Yeah, that's genocide.
You really can't do that.
That is literal genocide against redheads. That is shocking.
I love the idea that the thing that they managed to sneak in was confetti. They would have gone, oh, no, confetti, through you go, because, of course, you'll be getting married in Wimbledon. A lot of people wearing white, so it could go that way.
Yeah. OK, moving on, we've got the Telegraph and the SNP are living it up on Westminster's money while they still can, Diane.
So... the SNP ran up a £148,000 taxpayer bill at COP27 climate conference. Wow. OK, so as we all know, my maths is brilliant. Now, the SNP delegates, they sent about 20 to 25 of them to the COP27 climate conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it is absolutely shocking. They spent about £44,665 on 25 rooms at a luxurious hotel. I mean, we already know that the SNP finances are... I mean, the more we discover, the more interesting it becomes. The luxury camper van now seems quite reasonable compared to this.
And this is all expensed to the taxpayer.
Yes.
And it's a climate change conference, so they've flown to Egypt. They've flown to Egypt as if Zoom calls don't exist to have this conference to try and find out how they can stop people doing things like flying to Egypt.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't make any sense.
The argument goes like this. Climate change is such a threat that I need a five-star hotel. I need access to that minibar. Of all the things that this is the one that bothers me, though. I know I should be really upset about the thousands of pounds on these hotels. In the list of things that were expensed, a Boots meal deal. Just pay for your Boots meal deal. Who bothers to fill in the form?
These are Scottish people. Come on. Anyway, that's the end of part 2. Coming up, we've got schools tackling toxic masculinity, trigger warnings in musical theatre, and a controversial pledge to win the votes of young people. See you in a couple of minutes.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Telegraph now with a story designed in a lab to make me angry. A paedophile has been spared jail over child porn because they're transgender, Diane.
Nailed it. That is exactly it. So the headline is, trans paedophile avoids jail because of delay over which prison she would go to. So Tanya Howes is a transgender woman who was caught with Category A images, 39 Category A images, which are the most serious, and also admitted a separate charge of possessing 100 grossly offensive pornographic images of children, right? Now, the issue, now normally when you're caught with all of this, you are immediately put into custody because obviously you present an immediate danger to the public and children. But because Tanya Howes is a trans woman who has committed a sexual offence, who also has a penis, it means that
sounds like she's a fella.
She should go into a male prison. But this has been talked about by the Transgender Case Board, which was a board that was created in 2017 to sort of deal specifically with transgender prisoners. But it means that this person has got a suspended sentence. And I'm sorry, but I don't think this is quite right, because you look at the crimes that this person has committed.
Yeah.
And there's no sense of the punishment matching up with the crime purely because they're transgender. They still need to be put in prison for the crime.
Yeah, I mean, we saw somebody just a couple of days ago get a prison sentence for online trolling. And for somebody to be caught red-handed, to be convicted of possessing the worst types, the worst category of child porn, to then not go to jail because they're transgender just seems like an absolute abomination. It's just going to encourage other sex criminals to say, hey, I'm transgender, because they're going to get an easier ride.
There are at least two massive errors that happened here. As soon as the question gets raised about which prison, well, you know, the worst case scenario in terms of your debate would be the isolated one. Well, put them there first while you sort out the argument. Don't do the argument and just mean there's a massive delay. And OK, you could have a massive delay if at the end of the decision-making process, bang, you're in prison. But what happened was, because of the delay, then they were just given a suspended sentence. If that were an option all along, why have we just wasted all that time? So there are two things on that is either straight in prison and then sort out where later, or don't let the fact that there's delay be some sort of mitigating circumstance. The delay's your own fault for taking so long to decide it. The only thing I will say is they described the thing as a time lag, which strikes me as a great 90s film that was never made. I'd watch that.
And lag, of course, means prisoner, so it would have made sense. Anyway, we've got the Times now with the latest attempt by the government to feminise young men, Steve.
Boys must be taught how to tackle toxic masculinity. MPs say they need specific sex education lessons. All the way up, it's a study by the Commons Women's and Equality Committee, already making the boys feel really welcome, not even appearing in the title. However, one of the ideas is continuing the sexual education, the relationships education to the age of 18. Let's remember, for context, Rishi wants maths to be taught at 18. Given a choice, I know which I'd rather do, the one where you might get to see a diagram of a bosom. But you don't need to teach about toxic masculinity. You need to teach about toxic behaviour. Behaviour is a thing you do. Stop doing it, you're fine. Toxic masculinity is an identity. It's effectively telling you you are a problem. And this is where it all goes wrong. If boys feel vilified, you leave space for other people to get in with their ideas. Instead of just saying, no, actually, let's work out what's a nice thing to do or not. Let's just be polite rather than, no, you're a toxic man, you'll always be wrong. You leave a vacuum for Andrew Tate to come in and people grow up like Nick Dixon.
So the term toxic masculinity is pushing people towards Andrew Tate, who's a great guy, by the way.
I really like Steve's split between toxic masculinity and toxic behaviour.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important distinction to make, because it does have an effect. They've sort of interviewed the female teachers, because apparently female teachers are getting abuse, as well as girls are getting abuse. But it would work both ways. Like, I know when I was a girl, there were plenty of toxic women around as well. So I think, yeah, focusing on toxic behaviour is a really positive step, actually, in the right direction.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, The Guardian now with the claim that wrought iron is racist. Let's hope that scraping the bottom of the barrel never becomes racist, or The Guardian will be in a terrible catch-22, Diane.
So the Industrial Revolution iron method, quote, was taken from Jamaica by Britain. So there is, now, I love the fact that I've got this story and I'm sat next to a chemist, but the court process, which has allowed wrought iron to be mass-produced from scrap, was attributed to the British financier turned ironmaster, multi-skilled guy, Henry Court. But apparently, he actually took it. You see, there was a Jamaican ironworks, which was owned by a white enslaver, John Reeder, and he was ignorant of metallurgy. But the 76 black metallurgists, they were perfect. They invented this way of rolling the scrap.
It was the grooved rollers, which were similar to other rollers used elsewhere, like sugar production. So they got the idea and thought, yeah, let's have some of that. Gets rid of the impurities, makes better metal.
There we go. So they actually created that. And this is quite an interesting thing, because they have some of their names recorded in the records. And this is part they're saying as technological transfer and giving it to the people who created it rather than the white guy who claimed he created it in history is actually a key tenet of the reparations movement.
Right, but I mean, Steve, do you think? I mean, it seems like they've taken this and said, oh, you know, black people invented it. Where were all the wrought iron bridges in sub-Saharan Africa prior to, you know, colonisation?
I thought you would have liked this more. I thought you would have gone down the line of, if reparations is simply changing the Wikipedia entry on who invented the wrought iron process, fill your iron boots.
Yeah, but I know it's not going to end there. Then it's going to be, they're going to want taxpayers' money as well. That's going to be part of the...
No, but
something about reparations.
No, but there's a difference between... But the scientific... I think the question you actually genuinely is a really good one. It's a scientific breakthrough rather a technological breakthrough. Science is inventing the ability to do it. Technology is deploying that science into things that fit the world. So the fact that you can make a chemical... That's great in a lab, but being able to produce it in a factory, that's where you deploy technology. I think that actually boringly answers your question. I do apologise.
OK, well, this has turned into the Open University, but never mind. We've got the Mail now with the latest unnecessary trigger warning. I'm starting to think that trigger warnings only exist to get free advertising in the Daily Mail, Steve.
The headline's great, though. It's not all raindrops on roses. Now, theatre behind the Sound of Music stage show issues trigger warning that the musical depicts Nazi Germany and annexation of Austria. If you didn't know that about the Sound of Music, well done for managing to avoid that every Christmas. But it's a production in Chichester, so you probably weren't going to go anyway. And they put a trigger warning on the show. Can I read the full one, not just the bit of the Daily Mail? The full list of themes. It contains themes of music, family, romance, the threat of Nazi Germany and the annexation of Austria. And by the way, though, can I just say this? A trigger warning about music on a musical called The Sound of Music. If you needed that, you got bigger problems.
And those, putting those things together, I mean, that sounds... If anything, it sort of minimises the horrors of the Nazi regime, like likening them to music. And whatever the family values and things like that.
They have made it sound more like the producers, really, haven't they? But they've sort of missed out. Also, may see people wearing curtains as clothing. I would like a trigger warning for that, please.
And I would like to find out where they shop so I can buy some shirts.
Just to correct the record, though, the theatre spokesperson said we don't have trigger warnings, we have general guidance of content. Right. Either way, it's both pointless and harmless, and it's in Chichester, so I'm full out of caring.
Right, you're definitely not going to go and see it?
No, for all the reasons.
OK, well, we've got the Times now, and Spain's politicians have found a novel way of getting votes. Bribery, Diane.
So, Spain elections. Deputy PM offers young people €20,000 if re-elected. So, Yolanda Diaz's pledge heads the new far-left Sumar party, and it says that they may actually replace the hard-right Vox party as Spain's third largest party. So they're still not in charge, but they're kind of getting up the ranks.
They've got some influence.
Yeah. She's basically saying that they would give 18-year-olds, because they said the age of the majority, which is 18, as far as I've understood, €20,000. Now, this is very interesting because youth unemployment is incredibly high. They have in Spain, they have the highest youth unemployment in the EU. Apparently, 28.5% of under 25s in Spain are unemployed. Right. And they're known as the ninnies, which I think is a little unfair. It stands for Ni estudia ni trabajan, which means neither work nor study. Yep. So they can't study, they can't work, and they've had protests where they're like sort of holding up placards saying no house, no job, no pension, no fear. You know, it's a bit of a sort of a swelling of the youth. I mean, Macron's there sort of going, just turn off TikTok. You know, he's sort of whispering there. So this is an idea that they've come up with, but I don't see how that helps. I can understand that giving you a lump sum means that you're OK for a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you give kids, if you give, you know, teenagers a lump sum of money, you might as well just give that directly to the drug dealers of Madrid.
Well, that's what happens to, like, all the people who go into soap operas, isn't it? Like, the young actors, and they suddenly get their first, like, paycheck, and then you end up with all like, the drug habits and the rehab stories. Like, why can't they give, like, €20,000 to, like, 40-year-olds? Like...
What makes you say that?
Any particular hair colour you'd like these 40-year-olds to have?
No, I'm not specific. You know, I just think that 40-year-olds could do a lot with €20,000. You know, we're a bit more mature.
I mean, it's not going to happen. Even if they're the third party, this is one of those things where you can make a promise, get some more votes from it. That's all it is. The purpose of it isn't to fix the economic problems. There could be some argument about the generation gap and the wealth disparity, but surely it's more about, give me your vote, I'll promise to give you some money, which I won't give you later. It is bribery, very much like the triple lock for the pensions.
Yeah. OK, well, coming up in the final section, we have cakes that aren't healthy enough, wine that's not expensive enough, and hanging baskets that aren't biodiverse enough, because it's 2023. See you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know,
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Read my superstar panel that already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Daily Mail now, and Ben & Jerry's latest virtue signalling risks turning them into the Bud Light of frozen desserts. Steve?
Furious ice cream fans are continuing calls for Ben & Jerry's to face a boycott following the company's controversial July the 4th tweet. Imagine being a furious ice cream fan. By the way, that's just a great... So the tweet was, this 4th of July, it's high time we recognise that the US exists on stolen indigenous land and commit to returning it. So I'm not sure if that means, like, leave the keys, put them through the door, head out there. I mean, if they're saying we should find ways to address unfairnesses caused by land being taken, maybe that's one thing.
Then it's still a terrible idea.
Maybe it's still a terrible idea, but what it's not is saying, let's just give it back and see what happens. And also, this is what ice cream thinks. Let's go over to frozen yoghurt and take their view on the Elgin marbles.
Yeah, Ben & Jerry's, last time I checked, about 5 years ago, they just made ice cream. They made ice cream, it made you fat, it gave you diabetes, that was it. You know, they were pretty much a negative force in the world. Then all of a sudden they become this, like, virtue signalling social media outfit with a this small ice cream concern attached, just in one of the far-off wings, this subsidiary manufacturing ice cream.
That's when it was probably just Ben & Jerry, but then they get bought by Unilever and really double down on the tweeting, which seems a weird way of doing it. Can I just say what one tweeter said? American, so I'll try and do an accent. I'll go real south. Why on earth would any true American support these tweets from a woke liberals? I went for
from the south of Sussex.
Daniel Craig. That was my fault. I went for Knives Out. But it does taste good, though, doesn't it? That's the problem.
It is quite nice ice cream. I hate to admit it, but I'm just hoping Nutella don't start virtue signaling, because I cannot boycott that. But, I mean, you know, do you think this is good though? Because I mean, it means more woke people are going to eat Ben & Jerry's and then get sick.
Well, I think that, like, it's just ice cream. So, like, you can eat it and, like, not care about what they say.
That was my fault. I started accents.
Yeah.
It's all my fault.
See what you've done. Think about what you've done, Steve. Anyway, we've got the Times now, and Killjoys at TfL want us to not have our cake and not eat it, Diane.
This is ridiculous. OK, so TfL bans West End play poster over, quote, unhealthy wedding cake. So it's a poster for a Broadway comedy, and it's called Tony and Tina's Wedding. Now, obviously, when you want to sell a show, you need to come up with a captivating image, so it has Tony and Tina on top of a damn cake, because it's a wedding cake. And TfL, in their infinite wisdom, have said that they are promoting obesity and sugary treats, and that they need to take down this poster of a cake for a musical.
It's nonsensical. You can't even eat the cake. It's a musical. There's the picture there. You can see. I mean, it's a picture of a wedding. It's not even a particularly big or overly iced wedding cake. It's one of the healthiest wedding cakes I've ever seen.
I can't help feeling that there is some absolute nutbag who works in TfL who is just on a diet, and they've got triggered and they've gone, oh, I can't stand looking at the cake, and they've complained.
You couldn't have a nutbag at TfL, because that's probably against some sort of dietary restriction, Steve.
What I love about this story is that, regardless of their intention, not only will no lives be saved by not showing that cake to people, not even a calorie will be saved. It's not changing anyone's dietary habits at all.
And the production spent 20 grand on the campaign.
Yeah.
That's
and had to spend another £5 changing the poster to remove the cake. And I don't even know what they replaced it with. Moving on, we've got the Mail now with evidence that Rishi Sunak has been in Yorkshire too long, Steve.
Multi-millionaire Rishi Sunak comes under fire for £10 wine donation to struggling school. I'm actually going to come down on the side of Rishi on this one. So he donates this £10 wine, and the school... It's not just the school, it's the Parent, Teacher and Friends Association, they've widened it, of the Leybourne Primary School in Richmond, said, don't get me wrong, we didn't expect him to give us thousands or millions or anything like that, but something that's more than £10. So it's...
They expected millions?
They wanted at least...
They thought they were going to get millions?
But here's the thing that they should realise. So it's a £10 bottle of the House of Commons Merlot, which he'd signed, which, if you auction it, would go for way more than £10.
I thought you were going to say £2.
Yeah, that's the Liz Truss one.
I was at a boxing night, a charity boxing night, and they had a bottle of whiskey signed by Gordon Brown. This is in the sort of dying years of Gordon Brown's.
Was it empty?
And it was, it went for about... Oh, man, that thing just limped over the line when it was getting auctioned. It was really sad to see.
Oh, no, Liz Truss's would just be a signed can of, like, gin and tonic. Like, not even a bottle, just a can.
Half drunk.
Yeah.
OK, well, let's see if we can squeeze this one in. We've got the Telegraph with a very British dispute over watering flower pots, Dan. We've only got maybe 45 seconds.
OK, hanging baskets are scrapped for not being biodiverse enough. Councillors in Salisbury have been accused of virtue signalling because they want to bring in different ways of bringing green spaces into Salisbury, and they're saying that the hanging baskets are not biodiverse enough because the climate is changing, and so they're talking about bringing in, like, these strange things called living towers. Why not? Let's have a cactus.
Well, cactus is a bit like a living tower.
Yeah, it's lovely, a bit spiky. And parklets, and... they're going to kill off Gilbert the Dragon, which is apparently a floral display that they've had for 30 years.
Are they going to use a floral display of St George to cut its head off?
Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it?
A big flowery sword.
Middle-class problem of the day. We don't have hanging baskets. This is Salisbury. You're famous for Novichok, and now you're upset about this. And there's a person in the article saying, well, I often go to Salisbury. I don't think I'll go now. They've got a cathedral, but no hanging baskets.
Moving on. The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. The Daily Mail leads with AI chatbot told Windsor intruder to kill the Queen. The Guardian has lung cancer diagnosis in women to outnumber men's for the first time. The Financial Times leads with Xi told Putin face-to-face not to launch nuclear strike against Ukraine forces. The Daily Express has Lords must not defy the will of the people. The Eye has 7% mortgages forecast this summer as big lenders hike UK rates again. The Daily Star has AI chatbot wanted me to kill the Queen, and those were your front pages. And that's all we have time for. Thank you to my guests Stephen Allen and Diane Spencer. We're back tomorrow at the same time, and if you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast. Bye.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it